Hi, I'm Bob, the Mortgage Coach Mitchell, and we're doing a content video today. It's going to be on should I rent or should I buy? Okay. The other day I was reading an article online in my news feed as I was scrolling through it, and there was an article written by, I think it was on Wired or Slate or some one of those types of platforms, and the lady who wrote the article um, was a millennial. Not that there's anything wrong with being a millennial. I love you guys. But she had a little bit different take on things than I did. The article that she wrote was very slanted towards renting being the better decision. And it actually did get me to thinking, because there are a lot of different considerations to make when you're thinking about buying versus renting. Part of which, hey Tater, anyway, part of which is where you're at in your life. Okay, to a 27-year-old, I don't know how old she was, but to a young woman, living in an urban environment, it seemed to be to her to be more important to be near the bars and restaurants that she wanted to be able to go to, and as opposed to like economic security and building wealth and that sort of thing. Two different things. One's not better than the other, but it did point out to me that there's a difference in things to consider depending on your station in life. So anyway, I ended up writing an article that I published on LinkedIn. Should I rent or should I buy a home? Okay, it was published on September 28th. I will link to it in the comments. It's actually a pretty decent article, I thought. Of course, then again, I wrote it. But anyway, basically what I did was I compared buying a $300,000 house. I purposely chose a fairly modest house versus renting a similar single family house. Okay, now it's kind of hard to go into the details and crunch some of the numbers here, so I'm just going to kind of read them off. And what I would encourage you, if this is something that you're interested in, go ahead and click on the link and read the article, because I actually do a real good job again uh, on pointing out and crunching the numbers and being pretty objective. But anyway, here's what the numbers basically came down to. Again, this is on a $300,000 house. I think I figured the interest rate at 7%, which might actually be a little bit low now, but it's changed since I looked at it. Um, I, I made some assumptions. I made the assumption that you would be able to qualify for the mortgage and that you had the money to be able to make the deal work. Okay, so basically what it came out to be was that if you ended up paying your own closing cost and prepaids, which you don't necessarily have to do, okay, you can negotiate those into the contract. Um, Sometimes it's easier said than done. You have to have enough room in the appraisal for it to work, but it is indeed possible. But rather than muddy the waters with any of that, I went ahead and assumed that the person buying would pay their own closing cost. I based it upon 4% of the purchase price, which was, to me, is a pretty conservative estimate. So anyway, the cash to buy turned out to be $21,000. That was $9,000 for the down payment of a $300,000 house at 3% down. The cost to rent was first month's rent, last month's rent, and 1 month security deposit, so $7,500. Okay, the monthly payment on the house came out to be principal, interest, insurance, and taxes, factoring in a 2% maintenance and upkeep fee based upon the sales price of the house. Now, if I was going to do it again, I'd probably do it upon the square footage, but the numbers would come out the same. So that came out to be $500 a month that the people would stash to the side to cover for when the air conditioner shot craps or for when the roof needed to be replaced, that sort of thing. So anyway, it doesn't too. So it includes taxes, insurance, mortgage insurance. It also includes a 2% or $500 a month maintenance fee. Okay. I figured appreciation on the house at 2%. Again, I based that upon that's the Fed's target for inflation. So I figure that's pretty consumed. That's what they're shooting for. So using a 2% appreciation rate, which I think is actually really conservative, you'd probably have to go back to the 60s to, I mean, there was, I guess in 2008 and 9, there was some actual depreciation in the market. But if you took an average over the last 20 or 30 years, that'd be an interesting thing to look up. I think I will. But anyway, if you took an average over the last 20 or 30 years, I'm sure that the appreciation rate would be in excess of 2%. So we're real conservative on the 2%. All right. on a 10-year equity position. Now that is including the 2% appreciation as well as paying your mortgage down, because each month when you make your mortgage payment, you're actually paying a little bit of that mortgage off. Okay, whereas when rent, you're just going to go ahead and, your rent's going to be your rent. Now, if anything, it's going to go up in price as time goes on due to inflation. So I did not factor in an inflation rate. That was the number one mistake, and I appreciate the guy who on his comment pointed that out. But anyway, the 10-year equity position for a person buying that $300,000 house would be approximately $85,983.96. Now, that was approximate. Your equity position from renting an apartment or renting that house for 10 years, zero. So on a 20-year, when you took it out to 20 years, the equity position of buying came out to $249,049.77. Again, the equity position of renting for 20 years is zero. All right. Now, a guy on one of the comments, this was actually shared on another person's feed, and somebody actually made a comment. It pisses me off. I get more comments when somebody shares my post than I get on mine, but that's on you guys. Anyway, he pointed out something that that what would happen if I invested the money that I didn't spend on buying the house. So that difference between the $21,000 and the $17,500, so $13,500. If I took that $13,500 and I invested it in a money market account, or I forgot what kind of account he mentioned, but anyway, I gave 5% interest. Okay, which is an index fund. That's what he talked about, an index fund. I looked it up, and currently you can get into an index fund at about 5%. So that's what I did. Okay, anyway, that did actually level the playing field. So if instead of buying a house, you went ahead and rented the apartment, and you took that $13,500 and you invested it in an index fund, and when you factored in the 2% maintenance fee, the actual monthly housing expense on buying came out to be about $348 more than the monthly housing expense to rent. Okay, so if you took that $348 and you stashed that in the investment account, if you had the discipline, now I think most people wouldn't have the discipline, but assuming that you do, if you put that money at the $248 a month plus the $13,500, that was included, that there was the difference between what you had to get into the deal. Okay, at the end of 5 years, at the end of 10 years, at 5%, you'd end up with an equity position of $75,708. So right at $10,000 less than buying. So buying would still come out to be $10,000 less expensive in a 10-year holding period. I didn't factor it in over a 20-year period, but the longer you're in the house, the better the buying makes it. So again, should you buy or should you sell? Or should you buy or should you rent? It all depends on your situation. If you're going to be, if it's something that you're not comfortable with where you're going to be, if you might not be staying in, if you don't think your job's secure, you might be moving from the area. If you can't realistically expect that you're going to be able to stay in the house at least 5 years, it probably is a better decision to go ahead and rent. But if you're comfortable over 5 years that you're going to be in the same spot, then buying wins hands down, even factoring in putting that other money aside. Because one, I don't think people would do it. But two, it's $10,000 is $10,000. You'd rather have that money in your pocket than in somebody else's pocket. So anyway, I am Bob, the Mortgage Coach Mitchell. If you have any questions, I know that this isn't a very good one. When I get to the point where I can edit these videos and put some boards in and that sort of thing, I'll probably revisit this topic so that I could flash some boards up there to kind of illustrate the mathematics involved. But just suffice it to say that as long as you're going to be in the house over 5 years, okay, that generally speaking, buying is going to be a better decision. All things considered, like they say on NPR. All things considered. Anyway, if you have any questions about buying a house or versus renting, I know that they're a lot of number crunching, but I don't mind going over it with you on the telephone. We can even do a Zoom meeting and I'll crunch the numbers with you. So if you have any questions about it, please feel free to reach out to me. I am Bob, the Mortgage Coach Mitchell. Now, let's put you into a house as long as you're going to be there. Okay.